What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back for another Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire update video. It is a very exciting day because HBO has finally made their big official announcement regarding the Game of Thrones franchise. All of these new updates have sent the Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire fandom into a frenzy. Even George R.R. Martin revealed some very interesting information about one of the upcoming Game of Thrones shows. Let's go ahead and have a look at everything that was released on social media. As you all know, HBO will release the first season of Dunk and Egg at the beginning of the new year on the 18th of January. HBO has officially confirmed House of the Dragon's third season will release that same year in the summer of 2026. It will be the very first time HBO has ever released more than one Game of Thrones series in the same year, but that's not all. They also announced the Night of the Seven Kingdoms has already been given the green light for another season. The second season of the Dunk and Egg series will release in 2027. And the final season of House of the Dragon will air in 2028. It honestly feels like the Game of Thrones franchise is in the middle of a generational run. HBO's executives said, "We are thrilled to be able to deliver new seasons of these shows for the next 3 years for the legions of fans of the Game of Thrones universe." House of the Dragon and A Night of the Seven Kingdoms reveal just how expansive and richly imagined George R.R. Martin's universe continues to be. In January, I think audiences will be delighted by the inspiring underdog story of Dunk and Egg that George and Ira Parker have captured so beautifully. In this summer, House of the Dragon is set to ignite once again with some of its most epic battles yet. I think this is a very exciting update because we'll get to go back to Westeros for at least 3 years in a row. Waiting for a new season of House of the Dragon won't feel as dreadful as it once did. Now we'll have a new season of Dunk and Egg every year to hold us over. Now, HBO has also released a handful of official photos as well. In the first photo, we can see Damon Targaryen in the heat of battle with his blood-soaked Valyrian steel sword in hand. Once again, he shows us that he's not afraid to get his hands dirty, rather than hide behind the flame of his massive dragon. In the second photo, we can see Rhaenyra Targaryen reflecting on the decision she's made while holding the crown in hand. Now, I might be wrong about this, but it does look like she might be standing inside of the Red Keep in King's Landing. It will be very interesting to see how her story unfolds this upcoming season. HBO also released a new photo of Dunk and Egg celebrating during the events at Ashford Meadow. Now, believe it or not, we're only 58 days away until the release of the first episode of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. As exciting as all of this may be, I'm actually a little more interested in what George R.R. Martin confirmed regarding HBO's other Game of Thrones shows. This new information was brought to us by a fan named Javi Marcos, who recently met George R.R. Martin at a festival in Iceland. He said, "As you know, last week we were in Iceland as accredited media for the Iceland Festival where George R.R. Martin was in attendance. Now, besides showing him and giving him our book, Seven Kingdoms, we were able to have a short conversation, and he gave us a headline-grabbing scoop. George R.R. Martin confirmed to us, exclusively for those who were at the event, that Game of Thrones sequels are indeed in development. It had already been a year since we'd heard anything about the Game of Thrones spin-offs in development that were intended to be sequels to the original series. We'd only heard that they might try again with the Jon Snow series at a later date, but it didn't seem very likely. At the festival, George R.R. Martin was very direct. There's a Game of Thrones series or film in development that would be set after the events of the Game of Thrones show. It looks like HBO still wants to make a show that is set after the events of the original series. As most of you already know, they were developing a show about the life and adventures of Jon Snow after he was last seen heading out beyond the wall with the wildlings and his direwolf Ghost. Game of Thrones actor Kit Harington was signed on for the show, along with his own writers and directors. He initially wanted to tell the story of how Jon Snow was handling the aftermath of the Battle of Winterfell and the fall of King's Landing. After developing the series for well over a year, they ultimately decided to hold off on the show because they were not able to agree on what they should do with the character. As I've said in a number of different videos, I was really looking forward to the Jon Snow sequel because I've always wanted to stay with the main story, even if a number of our favorite characters are already dead. I still think there's so much more they could do with who is still around. There's a number of different ways they could bring back the White Walkers, and there will always be other enemies who have their eyes set on the Iron Throne. Now, I have to assume whatever sequel they do make will have to focus on someone from the original Game of Thrones show. I know they could always make a show that is set decades or even hundreds of years after the events in the final season, but I just don't think it would hit as hard if they centered the story around someone like Jon Snow, Bran Stark, or his sister Arya. We don't want to follow a character who is made up by the showrunners. I think most of you would agree. We want to follow one of George R.R. Martin's original characters from A Song of Ice and Fire. I've always said if they really want to break records and smash the ratings, they will find a way to bring Game of Thrones back in some form or fashion. Everyone wants a new ending, somehow, some way. A Game of Thrones sequel, if done right, would enhance the ending of that show. Unfortunately, we just don't know what that show will be. It might be a new series about Arya, Sansa, Jon, or someone we have never met. We can only speculate until that information is confirmed. Leave me some of your ideas down below. What do you think they could be making? And what show would you even want to see? Now, assuming they do greenlight a sequel, who would you want to follow or focus on? I would love to hear what you have to say. Now, before I go, I want to go over some of the other recent updates about House of the Dragon's 3rd season. You might not be aware of some things that will happen in the upcoming season if you haven't been watching my recent videos. Now, before we get started, I want to give a shout out to the Targaryen Loyalist social media account over on X who organized all of this information about House of the Dragon's 3rd season. This upcoming season of House of the Dragon will have 8 episodes as well. And according to House of the Dragon's head writer and showrunner Ryan Condal, they are adapting 4 major events from George R.R. Martin's novel Fire and Blood. HBO has already confirmed Season 3 will open up with one of these major events, known as the infamous Battle in the Gauntlet, which was the bloodiest and deadliest sea battle in Westerosi history. We might see other major battles like the Fish Feed, the Butcher's Ball, and the first battle at Tumbleton. It's also very likely that one of the major big-budget sequences will be the fall of King's Landing, when Damon and Rhaenyra take over the city and seize the Iron Throne. It has been confirmed that Ryan Condal did write the opening episode, as he has done for every other season thus far. Now, according to the writer and showrunner, Season 3 will feature a conceptual episode, likely focused on one individual character in the show. A Song of Ice and Fire fans assume this episode will largely focus on what's happening with Aegon, while many others believe it will highlight Daeron Targaryen's upcoming story. We're just gonna have to wait and see because that episode could feature any of the major characters in House of the Dragon. There's also going to be 3 brand new Valyrian steel items in the upcoming season, as well as a glass candle, something we never did see in the original show Game of Thrones. The new Valyrian steel swords we are sure to see are Vigilance, the ancestral blade of House Hightower, held by Lord Ormond Hightower, as well as the Orphan Maker, which will be carried by Sir Jon Roxton. Season 3 will feature the rise of Aegon's incredibly resilient dragon Sunfire. Aegon and his dragon Sunfire may have lost a battle at Rook's Rest, but they have not lost the war. Now, Daemon Targaryen and his dragon Caraxes are set to join the Riverlords and Northmen as they march south to confront the Hightower host led by Lord Ormond Hightower and Daeron Targaryen. Most of you have likely already seen photos of this in some of my recent videos. The market town of Tumbleton will be a new location where we will spend a significant amount of time. And other castles like Dragonstone, Harrenhal, and King's Landing will remain as our major locations in the series. It looks like we'll also see the infamous and mysterious Isle of Faces, a sacred island that sits right in the middle of the God's Eye. This actually has me very excited because I've always wanted to see this magical island, where the First Men and the Children of the Forest made an alliance thousands of years ago. Not only will we see the Isle of Faces, but we'll also see some of the green men who still inhabit that land. Now, we did already see a glimpse of them during the 2nd season when Daemon had his visions inside the weirwood net, but the new photos make me believe we might actually see them interact with one of our characters in the story. There have already been some rumors about Adam Valerion visiting the Isle of Faces this upcoming season. Maybe we will see him interact with the Green Men, or it might have something to do with the visions Aemond will have while he's at Harrenhal this season. I'm very excited and anxious to see how they will involve them in the story. I say that because there is a new leak that states Aemond One-Eye Targaryen will behead Sir Otto Hightower right in front of the Iron Throne during a hallucination scene. It says Aemond will also have hallucinations while he's staying at Harrenhal with the mysterious Alice Rivers. That scene will likely foreshadow the fate of Sir Otto Hightower. And I can't help but wonder if Alice Rivers will show Aemond how to see inside the weirwood net as well. If you haven't read Fire and Blood, you're likely not very familiar with the relationship Aemond had with Alice Rivers near the end of the Dance of the Dragons. It all started when Aemond first arrived at Harrenhal, after Daemon had already left from behind the safety of its castle walls. As soon as Daemon received word about Aemond and his army heading his way, he decided to abandon Harrenhal for a much better target. We already know Aemond reached Harrenhal a day after Sir Criston Cole, and that night celebrated a great victory. Daemon and his river scum had fled rather than face him, he thought. He felt foolish after he realized what happened. When Aemond One-Eye learned about the fall of King's Landing, his anger was fearsome to behold. While he was arriving at Harrenhal, Damon and Rhaenyra were securing the capital and its Iron Throne. So as you can imagine, Aemond unleashed his fury on everyone else. The first to suffer for it was Sir Simon Strong. Aemond One-Eye had no love for that ilk, and the haste with which he surrendered Harrenhal to Daemon Targaryen convinced him that the old man was a traitor. Now Sir Simon did swear of his innocence, insisting that he was still a loyal servant of the crown. His own great-nephew Larys Strong was Lord of Harrenhal, and King Aegon's Master of Whisperers, he reminded Aemon. However, these denials only inflamed Daemon One-Eye even more. He already assumed Larys was a traitor himself, he decided. How else would Damon and Rhaenyra have known when King's Landing was vulnerable? It seemed rather obvious that someone on the inside must have sent them word. And let us not forget how Sir Larys is Breakbone's brother, and thus an uncle to Rhaenyra's bastard sons. Aemond would go on to execute everyone at Harrenhal who had strong blood in their veins, as well as all the bastards. Every one of them except for Alys Rivers. Though the wet nurse was double his age, Aemond had taken her into his bed soon after taking Harrenhal. In fact, it's said that he liked Alys Rivers more than all the other women of the castle, including even the ones who look much better and much younger. As we all know, Aemond has always had a thing for older women. Alys Rivers might have even been the reason for why Aemond and Sir Criston Cole went their separate ways during the Dance of the Dragons. At Harrenhal, Aemond Targaryen and Sir Criston Cole debated how to best answer Rhaenyra's attacks. Not only were they losing battles, but their men started running short of food and fodder, and losing men and horses to hunger and sickness. Sir Criston Cole wanted them to march further south, where Aegon had more support, but Aemond hated that idea. He said only a craven runs from traitors. The loss of King's Landing and the Iron Throne made him very angry, and after word of the Fish Feed battle reached Harrenhal, Aemond damn near strangled the squire who delivered the message. Alys Rivers had to step in and save the boy's life. She seemed to be the only one who could get Aemond to listen. He favored an immediate attack upon King's Landing. He said Rhaenyra's dragons were no match for Vhagar. Sir Criston Cole said that was folly. 1 dragon against 6 was a fight for fools. Let them march south, he urged once more, and join their men with Lord Hightowers. Then Aemond could reunite with his brother Daeron and his dragon. King Aegon had escaped Rhaenyra's men, this they knew. Surely he would reclaim Sunfire and join his brothers eventually. And maybe their friends inside the city might find a way to free Helaena as well, so she could bring Dreamfire to the battle. 4 dragons might be able to win against 6, if one of them was Vhagar. However, once again, Aemond One-Eye Targaryen refused to consider this craven course. As regent for his brother, he might have commanded the hand's obedience, yet he did not. Now, Grand Maester Munkin said he did this because he still had respect for the older man, while Mushroom suggested that the men had become rivals for the affections of the wet nurse Alys Rivers. Even Septunu Stace somewhat agreed with what Mushroom said, only he says it was Aemond alone who became obsessed with the Rivers woman, to such an extent that he could not bear the thought of leaving without her. Whatever the reason, Sir Criston Cole and Aemond decided to go their separate ways thereafter. Sir Criston Cole would take command of their army and lead them south to join Ormond Hightower and Daeron, while Aemond would fight his own war, raining fire on the traitors from the air. Sooner or later, Rhaenyra would send a dragon or 2 out to stop him, and Vhagar would destroy them, he thought. He insisted she would never send all of her dragons. That would obviously leave King's Landing naked and vulnerable. Nor will she risk her own dragon Syrax or that last son of hers. Rhaenyra might call herself a queen, but she has a woman's faint heart and a mother's fears. In the Riverlands, Sir Criston Cole abandoned Harrenhal, striking south along the western shore of the God's Eye, with 3,600 men behind him. Meanwhile, Aemond had already left the castle, flying on Vhagar. Harrenhal stood empty no more than 3 days before Lady Frey swooped down to seize it. Inside, she had found only Alys Rivers, the wet nurse, and the supposed witch who had warmed Daemon's bed during his days at Harrenhal, and now she claimed to be carrying his child. "I have the dragon's bastard in me," the woman said, as she stood naked in the godswood with one hand upon her swollen belly. "I can feel his fires licking inside me," Alys said. Nor was her babe the only fire kindled by Aemond Targaryen. No longer tied to the castle or army, the one-eyed prince was free to fly wherever he would. It was war as Aegon the Conqueror and his sister had once waged, fought with Dragonflame, as Vhagar descended from the autumn sky again and again, to lay waste to the lands and villages and castles of the River Lords. Now, with all that being said, I really hope the showrunner and writers faithfully adapt Fire and Blood, because this should be a very fun and exciting season of House of the Dragon. I already know they have made some changes, but I hope they at least follow the author's overall guideline of the story. This really is a make it or break it season for the show. As you all know, the fans are already disappointed with how the second season ended. Let me know what you think about everything down below. How many of you like the direction they're heading in? I'd love to hear what you have to say. Once again, I want to thank all of you for watching another video. I hope you have a great day. I will see you again very soon. Bye.